Hey, what's up, guys? This is the second part to my WWE top ten WWE superstars that needs to retire. Now, I promise you that there will be a second part, and you're getting the second part right now. So, to end off on the first part of this video, I was talking about R-Truth, and he was the number 6 person that I said that needs to retire. And my reasons behind that was because I was saying, basically, they're not really using R-Truth for any particular purpose that's going to benefit his career. And, at this point in his career, it's really no point in him even still really wrestling because, still being a company because, when you think about it, like I said before, it's a shame that it took him all those years, even though he had not been in WWE for a very long time because he had left eventually. Then he came back in 2008. But it's a shame it took him to 2010 to win his first big major individual title and a singles title, and that was the United States title, only to lose it literally the next week on Raw or so when he lost it to The Miz. That's a shame. And then he won the tag team championship with Kofi Kingston in 2012 from Epico and Primo. And then it seems like after that, they didn't really utilize him as much. They put him in all these they put him in all these championship matches that none of them went in his favor. He lost every single time he was in a championship match since that time period. And then, like I said before, they're starting this thing with him and Goldust being a team when we all know that that's not just, we all know that these guys are just not going to be successful the way how they're utilizing them. And I just really feel that it would be for the better that, R-Truth should definitely retire. Next up at number 5, and I'm pretty sure some of you can agree with me. Some of you may not agree with me with this. But at number 5, Chris Jericho. Now, Chris Jericho is a 9-time Intercontinental Champion. He's won more Intercontinental titles than anybody else in the WWE. He set the idea of the Money in the Bank to happen. Chris Jericho is at the point of his career where all he does is literally put over young talent. He likes to put young talent over. And there's nothing wrong with that, But lately, I've been watching Chris Jericho, and you could tell that his time is really coming to an end because, first of all, he's getting slower in the ring. He's botching more of his moves. When he wrestled AJ Styles at Fastlane, it was a really good match. It was. But some of the moves he was doing, he was botching them. And then when he wrestled Dean Ambrose at the Ambrose Asylum match, it was a really slow-paced match that didn't really build until he fell into the thumbtacks. You just really look at a lot that's been going on. I've looked at Chris Jericho, and I think it's time. His promos are getting bad. He keeps saying the same stuff over and over. There was a time where Chris Jericho had some of the best promos. Now, one thing I never liked about Chris Jericho is that his promos would be way too long. He'd be talking for days. That's the one thing that I always hated. Even when he first came, back when it was called WWF, he used to do these long-term promos that people just couldn't, that would just go on forever. And, and he had some memorable moments back in the WWF, some stuff he used to say about Stephanie that I'll never forget. And, he's pretty much done it all in WWE. And even though he's never won the Money in the Bank, and even though he's never won the Royal Rumble, I honestly think that he's got nothing to be ashamed of if he just retired. Because first of all, one of the biggest issues I had is that he can't decide from rather being a rock star or being a wrestler. He started going, part of the reason why he started going part-time was so that he can pursue more of his music career, because he is a part of Fosse's, and they do be on tour a lot, you know, and he does songs with them. Well, I'm like, if you're going to do that, then you need to decide which one do you want to do more. Do you want to wrestle more, or do you want to be in the band more? And he's just getting at the point in his career where it's not like he particularly needs a win. Like I said, Chris Jericho is putting young talent over. And that's a good thing that he's doing this. It's a good thing that he's putting young talent over. But, you know, lately I've watched his matches. I've listened to his promos. And it's just something's got to be in his mind that his time is coming up sooner than later. Chris Jericho, without a shadow of a doubt, is one of the best heels that's in the company when he is one. And you know, Chris Jericho has done so much in the WWE. He's made so much history. And with all of the history that he's done, because he's done a lot of it, I think it'd be safe to say that he can retire going off strong. I would have no problem with Chris Jericho retiring. I think he should. I think he should give it up. Chris Jericho has pretty much accomplished everything that he has to accomplish, and at this point in his career, there's nothing else that he particularly needs to accomplish. And as much as people want to see him have one last title reign, as much people want to see that happen, I mean, I'm pretty sure it's not going to happen. Chris Jericho is a part-time wrestler. He's not like people like Brock Lesnar, who, even though he's a part-time wrestler, he was champion, but then he didn't even defend the title half the time he was champion. You know, why would Chris Jericho win a title and then when he wins it, he doesn't even defend it half the time he has it? That'd just be completely pointless, because that's what Brock Lesnar was doing when he was champion. I said, no one has to agree with me on this, but this is just perfectly my opinion. It's perfectly fine if some people don't agree with me with this, but I honestly believe that Chris Jericho should retire. I think he needs to retire. This is the point where, as I've been watching his matches lately, he's gotten a lot slower in the ring. He's botched a lot of moves, and it's really crazy. Not to say that other wrestlers don't botch either, but it's just basic things that I've seen him do that really lets me know that his time is running out. And I think Chris Jericho has nothing to be ashamed of if he retires. Chris Jericho, without a shadow of a doubt, needs to retire, and he needs to do it pretty soon. It's going to hurt a lot of people, but hey, Chris Jericho has paid his dues, as well as a lot of these people on his list. Like I said, he's a 9-time IC champion. That is more championship than anybody else. He's a former tag team champion. He's a former world's heavyweight champion. I think 6 times he won that. He's done a lot in the company, a lot. And honestly, I think the last big run that Chris Jericho had was back when he was rivaling with CM Punk in 2012. That was probably one of the best rivalries he had coming back to the company. And then, of course, I can't forget, AJ Styles one was good too. I'm not going to lie, it was. But like I said, it was like after that, you could really start to see that Chris Jericho is dying down. And, like I said, Chris Jericho, your Y2J, your time's coming up, man. At number 4, now, I haven't been seeing him lately. I don't know if it's because he's injured, or I don't know if it's just because he's just taking a break and off television, but the number 4 person who needs to retire is Mark Henry. Mark Henry, he has been on and off of the company. He started off back in the WWF. He was a part of the Nation of Domination, one of the biggest heel teams in that era. And, Mark Henry hasn't necessarily achieved everything that there is to achieve. He is a former European champion. He is a former World Heavyweight Champion. He defeated Randy Orton at Night of Champions 2011 to win his first and only World's Heavyweight Championship. So that's a huge accomplishment for him. But with that, he's never been a tag team champion. He's never been an Intercontinental champion. He's never been a United States champion. But even though he's never won those championships, I think it's safe to say that the world's strongest man should definitely retire. I mean, at this point in his career, there's nothing else that they've really done with him. Honestly, the last big push that they gave Mark Henry, where you thought he was going somewhere, was in 2011 when he had that Hall of Pain thing. That was like that really got him big because he became the world's heavyweight champion that year. So, that was big for him throughout that year through 2013. He was doing his Hall of Pain gimmick, and it was working for him, and he was actually gaining success from doing that. But after that, they put him and Big Show as a team to no avail because they didn't even win anything. And it just seems like since then, they haven't really done anything with him. They put him in a rivalry with Rusev last year, 2014, but we all knew Rusev was going to win it. And one of the best acts of Mark Henry that I will never forget of this era, because if you want to go back to the Attitude Era, it's pretty obvious. I'm going to say the best times when he had the Sex and Chocolate character, because when him and Mae Young was together, that was one of the funniest things in that era. But if you want to go to this era right now, one of the best acts of Mark Henry was when he turned on John Cena. He pretended like he was retiring on an episode of Raw. And everyone, I even bought it. I was 13 when I was looking at it. I really thought he was going to retire. And he messed around and put John Cena, World's Strongest Slam. That was one of the best acts I ever seen of Mark Henry. And since then, they have not really done anything big with him. Like I said, they put him in this thing with Rusev in 2014, but that was to no avail. That was like his best act. His last big act was in 2013. And it's like now, Mark Henry has got nothing to be ashamed of. He's pretty much achieved what he can achieve. He has not achieved as much as the other wrestlers on this list I've mentioned have achieved, but Mark Henry is most certainly one of the very best, in my opinion. Like I said, Mark Henry, he should retire. He needs to retire. And one of the reasons why I keep saying this also is because of his constant injuries that he keeps having. Every time I turn around, he's hurt from something. And, at this point in his life, it's no point in him to keep going if he's just going to keep getting hurt. It's not even just about him getting hurt, but it's about his health. You don't want to be in your 60s or something, and then you got all these issues with your body because you're constantly getting hurt. Every time I turn around, he got injured from something. And, I just feel like Mark Henry should retire. They haven't done anything with him. They haven't used him lately. They have not used him in any major storyline since really the Rusev thing. And in my opinion, the last one they actually used him in that was actually good was the one that he had with Cena. And since then, they have not really used him for anything particularly big. So if I were to say another guy who needs to retire, it's most definitely Mark Henry. Mark Henry, Sex and Chocolate, his other name he called himself, as he used to be called. He should have an actual retirement, not like how he did when he tricked everybody in 2013. No, I mean an actual retirement where he actually comes up and announces his retirement. Like he definitely should have it. He deserves it. He deserves it 100%. Without a shadow of a doubt. At number 3, man, let me think about number 3. I'm going to pause and think about it real quick. Hey guys, I'm back. I just had to think about it real quick. At number 3, and this is probably going to surprise a lot of people because you would probably wonder why I would put someone like this on this list. Number 3, Triple H. And why do I say Triple H needs to retire? Well, let's think about it for a minute. You know, ever since about 2011, he's been doing this thing of being the COO of the company, and then he started this whole authority gimmick where he was like him and Stephanie are like the authority people. And it's like, I've watched Triple H recently in the ring, and it's not that he's not in ring shape. It's not that he can't wrestle, but it's just like, which one are you gonna do? Are you gonna stay in the man with the suit and tie, or are you gonna be the guy that wrestles? And at this point, he always tries to find a way to be in the spotlight. He always tries to find a way to be in a match at WrestleMania. And somewhere or another, he always tries to find a way to put himself at WrestleMania. Triple H is probably one of the most accomplished on this list. He won the Royal Rumble in 2002. Like I said, easier said than done. He's won the World's Heavyweight title so many times. I can't even, like, I think, what was it? He's won it multiple times. He's a former WWE champion. You know, Triple H has pretty much achieved everything there is to achieve. And I don't really, and at this point, he's had every accolade that there's to achieve, and I just don't really get his whole point of even wrestling at this point in his career. Now, he is a part-timer. He does not wrestle full-time. He stopped doing that a long time ago. He actually stopped doing that by the time that he became the CEO. He wasn't wrestling full-time anymore. After 2010, he stopped wrestling full-time. So he's a part-time wrestler, but I just don't really get his whole supremacy of wrestling at this point in time. Now, it's not to say he hasn't built any particular big storylines that has gotten him to do these things, but it's kind of like this. Triple H, give other people opportunity. You know, stop putting yourself in the spotlight. At this point in your career, you'll be better off at just standing as the guy with the tie suit. Yes, he had a good thing going on with Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania 30. That was great. You know, the thing with Sting, the build up to that match was okay. The actual match itself, the only thing that made it good was the fact that the NWO and his side, D Generation X, was fighting each other. That was probably the only thing anybody even cared about in that match. So he's had, you know, good things that's happened recently. Of course, one of the reasons why a lot of people hate on Triple H is because he held the title way too long in 2003. He pretty much hogged it throughout that year. And even after Randy Orton beat him for it in 2004, ended up winning it back. Goldberg beat him in 2003. Then he won it back 3 months later. It's like, you know, Triple H has already had his time to be that guy. And at this point, I just don't know why he particularly needs to keep wrestling. And I can't really say that he's going to retire, because recently he signed a 3-year contract or something to continue wrestling for a certain amount of years. And he was just WWE's World Heavyweight Champion at